First off, I want to start off by saying that this video is a very highly controversial video because not everybody's going to have the same experiences or the same opinions or thoughts on a vaccine. If you don't know anything about me as a person with, like how I interpret vaccines, I'm highly pro-vaccine. I understand science. I understand how they work. Now there are some vaccines that I do more research than others before I get vaccines, and ironically, actually, if a doctor is pushing me to get a vaccine, I won't necessarily get it until I do my research. And the time that they stop pushing me to get a vaccine, I probably will get it at that point because I will have done my research to know what benefits my body. In no way, shape, or form am I trying to force anybody to get a COVID vaccine or force anybody to get a vaccine that they don't wish. It is your body, your choice, what you want to do. But coming from a scientific perspective, I understand why vaccines work and why they work to slow pandemics down and diseases. So with that being said, I just wanted to let you guys know that this video is in no way, shape, or form trying to offend anybody, but I'm sure it's going to offend somebody. I just wanted to kind of put my 2 cents on it that, like, yes, vaccines are kind of a personal choice as to what you want to do. So anyways, with that being said, we'll jump right into this video. It's Maddie. Welcome back to my channel, and some of you may be watching this video more so if you are not a regular member of my channel, because this is my experience of dealing with the 3 vaccines of COVID-19. Just so you're aware, I'm wearing these blue light glasses because I've had a headache all day, and I think it's part of a side effect to my booster. Really the only symptom I've had other than a sore arm and a little bit of insulin resistance, but nothing too crazy like I had with my first shot. But just if you see my ring light and a bunch of other lighting reflect back in there, that is why. Right now, if I look at a screen right now, it actually kind of hurts my eyes, so I'm kind of wearing these to turn the lighting a little bit yellow. But anyways, I'm going to go through and share how I dealt with my COVID-19 vaccine series and how it affected me as a person, and as a type 1 diabetic. Now, technically under at least Wisconsin protocol, type 1 diabetics are not considered immunocompromised, and I also look at myself as that way because I'm well controlled and I'm young and I don't have any other comorbidities that could put me at a higher risk of getting super sick from COVID. But nonetheless, as understanding what a vaccine does, I decided to go for it and get the COVID-19 vaccines. Now, keep in mind, I was offered the initial 2 vaccines beginning of last year. In the last semester of my schooling, my college actually was providing any student in a patient-facing role, meaning student dental hygienist like myself. I am now a licensed RDH since that point, but any student nurses, student physicians, physical therapist assistants, medical assistants, CNAs, you name it. If you are in a student in a patient-facing setting or a patient-facing role, you were given the opportunity to go through a particular health group and get both COVID-19 vaccines at no cost to you. Now, I could have gotten it under my insurance for free as well, but they still wanted my insurance cards, but they never billed me for anything, so it was completely free of charge for me to get these vaccines. I just had to go to 2 different sites. The first one was more of a actual healthcare facility. The second one was at famous Lambeau Field, so that was kind of interesting. And then my 3rd vaccine I just got in a normal clinic that I go to. I believe my primary healthcare provider is at that clinic as well. So, COVID-19 vaccines, as you're aware, are offered everywhere, and people have a lot of controversy on them, and I'm not going to try to delve into that, but I'll give you a basics as to what a vaccine is. So, a vaccine basically is, in the terms of a virus, it's usually not live. It's usually a part of a virus that has been broken down, into smaller particles, often in a suspension of a glucose solution or a bunch of other preservatives, typically egg-based. That's why they ask you if you have egg allergies and things like that before they give you a vaccine. And that's administered underneath into your muscle, usually into the deltoid muscle here, which is in your upper arm. Sometimes they will give it to you in your gluteus, which is your butt. Otherwise, you can do it on your quadriceps, which are your thighs. Those are the 3 most common areas for any vaccine to be given. I've had vaccines given in all 3 of my locations. As a matter of fact, one of my more recent ones, I think a year and a half ago when I had my physical, I think I was due for like tetanus, and I did my flu shot and a whole bunch of things at once. And I'm like, I don't want to keep my arm super sore. So I asked the nurse if I could have one in my thigh, and she thought it was hilarious. But I'm like, well, just give it to me there. And it didn't even bother me because I just didn't want to keep getting vaccine after vaccine in the same location. But anyways, a vaccine is administered intramuscularly. It's got to go way under there. And basically what it's designed to do is it's designed to kind of falsely build your immune system, meaning it's trying to trick your immune system into thinking you've been infected with some sort of virus, or in some vaccines, like if you're getting a tetanus shot, that is against a bacteria called Clostridium tetani, which can give you a bloodborne disease, and you don't want that. So either a vaccine will prevent against some sort of bacteria or virus, and it'll trick your immune system into thinking you're sick with something, and you typically will experience maybe a little bit of symptoms or mild symptoms, as if your body is fighting off the infection, so that you build what we call antibodies. And antibodies are produced, again, by your immune system. And what's cool about antibodies is once you build them, your body is prepared to fight that infection again. So once you've tricked your body into thinking you fought the infection, so I come up to somebody now with COVID-19, theoretically, or theoretically come up to somebody with influenza A, I have this vaccine in my body. I'm either one, if I get exposed to it and get the virus, my body's either going to beat it completely and I'm not even going to know I had it, or if I do get the virus, my symptoms are going to be much more mild because I've already built some antibodies up against that specific virus, so that my downtime and my recovery time is so much quicker. Vaccines are not a foolproof thing, and I think that's why a lot of people are refusing to get a COVID vaccine. They think it's a one-time, full-time deal where it's going to prevent you from anything and everything. That's not the case with any vaccine. Vaccines are designed to help either completely eliminate your chances of having a disease. It can, but mainly they are for if you are exposed to a virus or a bacteria, that if you do get sick, that your symptoms are going to be much more mild. For example, I was fully vaccinated for the flu 3 years ago. My mother was not. She brought influenza A home. She unfortunately caught it from somebody at work. She tested positive in urgent care, and she was down for 5 days or 6 days. I had happened to pick up influenza A. The virus had mutated a little bit, but I only had the recovery time or the downtime of about 2 days because I was fully vaccinated. My body had built some antibodies in preparation for that virus because I had gotten the vaccine earlier. I hope what I'm saying is making sense, but that's the basic science behind a vaccine. Now I'll delve into my experiences with the COVID-19 vaccines. So as I said, hopefully what I'm saying is making sense, but I got my first COVID vaccines in February and March of 2021, and then after doing some research and the booster that had come out in the fall time, I finally got my COVID booster yesterday. So the first vaccine that first of all, there's all these different brands of COVID vaccines. There's Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and I think there's other ones too. AstraZeneca made one. I don't even know. There's probably hundreds of brands of COVID vaccines, but those are probably the three big ones that I can think of is Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. So Pfizer and Moderna are 2-dose series for the initial vaccines, and then Johnson & Johnson's a 1-shot. And I believe initially when I gotten the letter saying like, oh, you're eligible to get the vaccine, I was so excited because knowing how young I was and not considered immune compromised, I didn't think I was going to be able to get this vaccine until much later. But because of my job as a student facing a patient in a patient-facing role and knowing what my job was entailing for a high risk for COVID, I was so thankful I was able to get this vaccine. And it was funny because me and my classmates were definitely that chose to get the vaccine at that time. We're definitely very lucky, and a lot of people were looking at us because the vast majority of the people at the time getting the vaccine in my state were elderly or immunocompromised. So I think they were kind of looking at us like, how are they able to get this vaccine? But of course, every system is going to know exactly why people got the vaccine at a certain time. And mind you, I got the vaccines when they were probably limiting who can get it and who can't to start. And it wasn't fully open to just anyone. So I got my first vaccine in February 25th, 2021 to be exact. And you go through a series of different questions. I thought I was getting the Pfizer's version, but then all of a sudden something happened where we had a Pfizer shortage in this state of Wisconsin, so we ended up getting Moderna. And I'm like, well, I guess it doesn't really matter. You know, what's the major difference? Actually, Moderna is a little more effective, I guess. But it is virulent in the symptoms you get after. It is much more aggressive, especially on the younger people. From what I've talked to a nurse about, that Moderna is very, very harsh on young people's bodies. So I got my first vaccine. I was fine and dandy up until maybe 6-7 hours later. All of a sudden, I feel like I'm getting arthritis. I had a low-grade fever, and I couldn't move for a good day. And I'm like, man, my body really is making the antibodies against this COVID virus. But it was very short-lived, and I did not have a very positive experience with my first vaccine, especially with managing blood sugars, because no matter how much insulin I took, I was very, very high with my blood sugars. I was like constantly 200 to 240. Now you're thinking, well, that's high, but not as high as other people can get. And I understand that, but in my aspect, I'm like, I'm probably burning out a kidney just sitting here with this vaccine in my body. But after talking to a lot of different people, you're better off having a reaction to a vaccine than you are not. And by reaction, I don't mean allergic reaction. I mean a symptomatic, like you're kind of mildly sick reaction, because it means that your body is making those antibodies and is working hard to keep those antibodies in your body so that you can fight that infection when it comes around. So if you took Moderna's version, like I did, you had to wait 4 weeks for your next injection. So then 4 weeks later, exactly on March 25th, I did the same injection at Lambeau Field. And no problems, not even a sore arm. And I'm like, well, to go from I was like death scared to go through the vaccine again, because I'm like, well, great. I just had to, if I had this much symptomatology the first time, I am sure that my second one is going to be just as awful. So I went through it again, and I said my arm wasn't even hardly sore, no fever, no symptoms, no blood sugar problems. And I'm like, well, what is this? Like one extreme to the other. But then I really thought, okay, my body really had built the antibodies against it. So as it was exposed again for the second time, it probably didn't even matter. My body was used to the foreign virus that was in my body. So I completed my series. I thought, great, we're on our way here. As more and more people got vaccinated, numbers started to drop, things like that. And unfortunately, now we have more variants out there. The variants, from what I'm reading, are getting weaker. They're not as strong of a variant as the initial ones that came out when COVID first broke out. But with that being said, all viruses will mutate over a certain period of time. That's why we have to get flu vaccines every year, because that virus will mutate so much every single year. And you got to have to retrain your body to make new antibodies for that. And then kind of coming out in fall, I don't exactly know at what point they were developing either a third shot or a booster. There actually is a difference. The nurse told me yesterday, I had signed up online to get my booster because I'm like, okay, well, I'll just do it online. My healthcare system has it grouped into the same category as third injection versus booster, because they're technically not the same. Yes, your booster is your third shot, but there is a third level vaccine for people who are considered immunocompromised, meaning they would go through and get the full dose again of either Pfizer, Moderna, or Johnson & Johnson. If you're Johnson & Johnson, it would have been your second one. But they would either go through and get they would get that repeat of that full dose again to protect them because they're more immunocompromised. But the booster, what I got, is a half dose. So you're only getting like half of the dosage of what you originally got in your initial stuff. And I had asked her, do you stick with the same brand just to keep it easier on your body and, delay with confusion? And they said yes. So I'm like, fine, great, here we go again with Moderna. Let's see what happens. And I would say this one is leaning more towards my second shot than it is my first one. I had a sore throat this morning, but it went away, and I don't think it was related to this. I have had kind of a dull headache all day. A little bit of a sore arm, nothing super bad. Insulin resistance, a little bit, not as bad as my first injection. But I kind of planned it to the point where, like, I'm on my period, so, like, I'm usually less insulin resistant on my period, so my insulin resistance hasn't been as bad. So I timed that out really well. But I would definitely say that this third booster, as far as symptoms, is probably closer to what I experienced the second time around than I did the first time. So very, very mild. If anything, maybe a random headache, and a little bit of insulin resistance, and that's really about it, and a tiny sore arm. So my body is definitely used to whatever foreign substance is in there now. The reason why that people need to get boosted now, and I really did my research. I was very leery to get the booster at first because I'm like, well, why do I want to initiate? And I did my part. Like, why do I need to go through this again? they're finding that just like any other vaccine, you talk about flu vaccines lasting only a year, or say a tetanus shot lasting 10 years, over time certain pathogens will mutate. Because of how fast COVID is mutating, you're better off having that booster. I think you can get the booster within 6 months of your initial 2. I was closer to about 9 months, but it doesn't really matter. Now they're talking a 4th COVID vaccine, or a 4th booster, or another different type of COVID vaccine for the fall because of all these Delta and Omicron variants that are out there. Now the initial vaccines that you go through, the 3, are against the initial strains. Now, as I said, a vaccine is not designed to fully prevent you from getting sick. It's designed to make your symptoms milder, keep you out of the hospital so that we don't overwhelm the hospital systems because your symptoms are going to be mild. And number 3, keep you from dying. That is the huge thing with vaccines. Before vaccines were out for any diseases like if you guys are, you know what I'm saying, like people are so against a vaccine that is newer to this environment versus something like a polio vaccine or a hepatitis vaccine that's been around forever, but it does a similar thing just for a different pathogen. If we didn't have vaccines for polio, I bet you every child right now would be running around with having polio, or we have some iron lungs yet. I got polio vaccinated for polio when I was younger. As a matter of fact, I personally know a man who is in his 80s that went to school with my grandma that survived polio. Very lucky that he only had like the 2nd type of virus that didn't cause him to get the iron lung, but he has a limp now and he has some health issues because of polio. And I think he would have given anything to have had a polio vaccine at that time to prevent him from either getting polio or prevent him from getting a severe form of polio that would have caused him less health issues. So these vaccines are designed to help slow something or end something. Because of the smallpox vaccines, you don't even hear of smallpox anymore. You don't hardly hear of hepatitis anymore, specifically hepatitis B or A, because people are vaccinated for them. You don't hear of measles and mumps and rubella anymore either, because most people are vaccinated for them. Now, as these older diseases are coming back, it's because less and less people are getting vaccinated. A vaccine is kind of allowing your body to be a buffing board or a barrier to that pathogen. Meaning, even if I say picked up COVID-19 or hepatitis B, my odds of being able to spread it to somebody else are very, very low, because if I'm vaccinated and I'm fighting it, I'm either going to be asymptomatic and not know I have the virus, or I'm going to be so mildly symptomatic that I'm not going to be expelling much virus particles into the air. It's basic science. So vaccines really are, in my opinion, I know this video has turned into like a science / Maddie's experience with COVID vaccines, but vaccines are very much an important scientific model for slowing things down in the pathogen world and in our world of disease, literally to slow the spread of disease. As I said, and as I will repeat again, vaccines are not designed to fully eliminate or cut your chances from something, but it is to help keep everyone as healthy as we can. And as I said, I'm not trying to harp on people that choose not to vaccinate their kids. I'm not trying to harp on people who don't want to get vaccines themselves, because I have family members right now that are very close and near and dear to my heart that are not COVID vaccinated. And you know what? That is okay, because it is their choice. I do the vaccines also to think about not only myself. I'm trying to prevent and help others who either 1, don't want the vaccines, or 2, cannot have the vaccines because of an allergy or there are certain medical conditions like Guillain-Barré syndrome that cannot have certain vaccines, and I want to protect them as best as I can by being a barrier to any disease, and more specifically now that we're dealing with COVID-19, I want to be that barrier for COVID-19. I don't want to give it to my patients, I don't want to spread it to my family, and if I get it myself, I certainly don't want to end up in the hospital if I can prevent it. So this is why vaccines to me are important, and this is kind of my experiencing with COVID-19 vaccines. For me personally, now keep in mind my experience may be different than others. I know Pfizer typically will have less symptoms for people than Moderna, but both are still really good. Johnson & Johnson, I think, is still a good candidate. I've heard some things about Johnson & Johnson giving women blood clots, so I was very thankful that I didn't get that one just for that reason, that I would have been that rare woman or women that would have gotten some blood clots. So I guess I'm thankful I went through Moderna and everything, and everybody's like, oh, these vaccines, they can cause this and this later down in the road. You know what? If it does, it does. It doesn't, it doesn't. And I personally think that vaccines have done me more good in my life than harm. Some people would try to reckon and argue with me that a vaccine caused my type 1 diabetes. It's a good theory, but I certainly don't think so. I think my diabetes was caused by some sort of virus that I wasn't vaccinated for, or some head cold that I got picked up as a little kid, and it just happened to destroy my body immune system, or it altered a little bit of my immune system to attack my own pancreas. Or maybe it was because of a little bit of my genetic factor too. I don't know. There's truly, or something, maybe some toxin I was exposed to as a young kid, some sort of car fume that I breathed in for 15 seconds. We don't know exactly what causes these diseases, so I really don't personally like when people pinpoint a vaccine as to causing autism, and that's not even true. That was disproven. That was a falsified study. I learned that from my microbiology teacher in college. I don't like it when people say, oh, it causes this and this and that and that. It causes cancer. Maybe in some people it can add to that, but I personally don't think that a vaccine itself is going to cause X, Y, and Z in people. I think if anything is going to cause any type of illness, it's what you do to your own self. I eat healthy as I can. I exercise. I try to do things that I can control, but you know what? There are things that I can't control. If I get cancer 30 years down the road, I certainly don't think it's going to come from the COVID vaccines. It probably has come from something else. So therefore, that's how I look at that, and that's how I interpret. So with that being said, that is why I went forward with these COVID vaccines, because to me, a vaccine, in my opinion, does more good than it does harm. And I do it more so, like I said, for myself, but I do it for humanity. If getting my full series is going to help slow the spread of COVID, great. That's really my goal. And also nice for me, too, that I'm probably not going to end up in the hospital super severely sick from it. And especially with my job being as high risk as it was more of an option, more of a necessity for me and less of an option at this point to get it. And I know over time we're going to get through this pandemic just like any other pandemics or epidemics that we've gone through in the past. There was the Spanish flu back in 1918. There was polio. At the time there was smallpox. There was all these different things that people were going through. And as I said, I'm sure somebody's going to come on this video and tell me that I am basically trying to slander people who don't get vaccines or don't vaccinate their kids. No, I'm simply stating what I know as a girl who heavily believes in science and understands science. What you choose to do in your life is what you choose to do. So long as, one, you're not hurting other people, do what you want to do. I mean, like, if you're not going to be hurting other people, or interfering with other people's lives and choices, then do what you want to do, because I'm not going to certainly force you or force anybody else to get a vaccine, if that makes sense. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it. I said I kind of repeated myself in multiple different ways to just basically tell you, like, this is what I believe in, and this is what I see as right for my body and what I see as right for the world we live in right now. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a big thumbs up. Feel free to hit that subscribe button. I post as often as I can about type 1 diabetes plus more. Stay tuned. I'm hoping to do a couple of other videos like my Christmas haul, which I do every year because I think it's kind of a fun video. As well as I'm thinking about doing something big on social media again. Like, I don't want to ruin the surprise, but I kind of want to, I don't know, I guess start something else kind of on a social media outlet. So when we get there, we'll get there, and hopefully that'll all work out. So stay tuned for those things. But until next time for another video, take care, God bless, be kind, spread positivity, and be thankful. And I love you all from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for watching this video, and thank you for continuing to support me. And I will see you guys next time. Bye, everyone.